also essentially sanctioned the province of Xinjiang, its officials, and what can be seen as the Xinjiang card. And we see that this bill is part of a larger pattern and continuation of other bills that we have seen in the past, in the last year, which was on Hong Kong, on Taiwan, and on other issues. And we see that these bills are part of the larger context of containing China. And the objective of having this Friends of Silk Road conclave today with different intellectuals, leaders, and academia is to discuss and debate the implications of this, not only for China, but for the rest of the world. How the selective application of human rights and lawfare can affect the developing world, and not only China, but partners of China. And we are very grateful that for this conference, we have a variety of important good speakers and also very good members of the audience. We have with us, who will be the first speaker, Dr. Ijaz Akram, who is a professor. He has illustrious credentials from the academia, and now he is also the chairman of the Rahmatul Alameen Authority. Congratulations on this new appointment.
Thank you.
And we also have Dr. Shirin Mazari, the Minister for Human Rights. She had a cabinet meeting at this time, so she has sent a video message. Then we have Professor Li Shiguang, Ms. Saba Aslam, who's the Executive Director of the Islamabad Institute of Conflict Resolution, Professor Li Shiguang, who's the Director of the Center for Pakistan Cultural and Communication Center at Tsinghua University and an old friend of Pakistan-China Institute. And of course, Senator Mushaid Hussain Sayyid, who's the Chairman of the Pakistan-China Institute and Chairman of the Defense Committee of the Senate. And we would also like input, perspectives, and interventions as we proceed from Ambassador Masood Khalid and other people, Zamir Ahmed Awan Sahab and others who are here, and others also welcome.
Mr. Ayaz Wazir Sahab is also here.
And Ayaz Wazir Sahab, of course. Absolutely. So I would like to give the virtual podium to now Dr. Ijaz Akram.
Thank you very much, Mustafa Sayyid Saab. My profound regards and gratitude to Mr. Mushaid Hussain Sayyid Sahib, Professor Li Shiguang, and all of the dignitaries, learned scholars on this forum. Assalamu alaikum. First of all, I begin this message with an apology that my appearance is rather casual because I'm hospitalized with COVID. And so, but I still did not consider saying no to this very important message. And for anything that I need an excuse to interact with Professor Lee and Senator Mushaid, even if I'm in the hospital bed. So with that, I begin my remarks. Mustafa, how many minutes?
You have 5 to 6 minutes, Dr. Ijaz.
Very well, very well. I'll wrap it within 6 minutes. So currently, as far as the issue of Xinjiang is concerned, this is a flashpoint, and it's not really anything which is central to the US-China relationship, or to China-Pakistan relationship, or Pakistan and the US relationship. So this is an excuse, a flashpoint for a problem that is much bigger than just Xinjiang. But since the US has made it an excuse, so we can obviously rule out some of the things that the Americans say against China on the issue of Xinjiang. And I must also say that the Western groups in general have successfully rallied certain parts of the Muslim world against China on the issue of Xinjiang. And this is where the danger lies, because a vast majority of the Muslims do not understand China, let alone understand the dynamics of relationship between Beijing and Urumqi and Kashgar. So here is the nutshell, the conclusion of my talk. Modern state is a surveillance state. There are levels of surveillance. Israel has its own level of surveillance, probably the most surveilled state in the history of humanity. Similarly, in Germany and France and Canada and UK and the USA and so forth, the more advanced you are, the more means of surveillance you have at your disposal. So, and because CIA and the Western agencies have a history of creating trouble in nations to bludgeon them into submission and to get them to accept their demands, or else they will blackmail them with different types of color revolutions and different types of problems that they will create. Just what they did in Syria and in Lebanon, in Tunisia, in Egypt, and so forth. So the world is becoming gradually more and more mastering in the color revolution science, because as the humanity progresses, they also become more gullible and subject to their consciousness is subject to a lot of things that are happening in social media, and these information flows can be controlled and can be funded to create policy outcomes of their own choice. Then the states, on the other hand, because this is happening from the global authorities, then the states, the local states, have no choice but to surveil, but to do surveillance on their citizens so that they can protect them. And so those of us who have been in Xinjiang, of course, understand that even within Xinjiang, the level of surveillance is different. But China, which is one of the most advanced and capable states, is the entire state is a surveillance state. Islamabad in Pakistan has much higher level of surveillance than my village in Punjab. So it depends on your capacity, which is why Islamabad is safer than other places in Pakistan, is because of the higher level of surveillance. So now I'm not supporting the high level of surveillance, but I'm just stating it as a matter of fact that the states, the most successful states that are equipped with the technological means to surveil, will use it to protect themselves, which is what China is doing in Hong Kong and in Xinjiang. So, but as far as so that can be, is our position not only as Pakistanis working with our system and the government and so forth, but Pakistanis who have had long relationship with China and who there are very few of us who actually understand China from inside. And so the in this twilight zone that Pakistan is right now between the US and China, there are certain misconceptions that the Pakistani public and our policymakers are facing. And one of the biggest misconception is that you can balance between China and the USA. And our very important quarters of our government they still believe that you can balance between an enemy and a friend, or between a frenemy and a friend. This balance will not hold ground for too long, because if Pakistan has to keep in mind, if the Pakistanis end up pissing off the Chinese political system, it will, the repair will take a long time. It took us 7 decades to build a beautiful trust between each other, not only trust, but a certain amount of affinity and love between two civilizations that transcend the nation states. Instead of taking that further, we are at the risk of spilling that entire thing. And so I think that you cannot balance between the United States and China. You have, from crusades to colonialism, an entity that has come out and often hurt you. And then you have the last 7 decades, not only just that, but throughout the history of the Silk Road, you have these two civilizations which have been, by and large, 99.9% friendly. And so we do not have 1492 on our eastern borders of Islam, but we have those on the western borders of Islam. There is a very big difference here. So therefore, I think that this whole talk of balance will cost Pakistanis very dearly. And my suggestion to my government and the state offices is to support China in its quest for truth and in its quest for protecting itself, protecting the region, and hence also protecting the globe. I think my time is up. I could keep on going for another hour, but since I promised that I would finish in 6 minutes, so I should stop and maybe wait for question and answers.
Thank you. Very good.
Dr. Ijaz. I think that was very clear and crisp, to the point, a lot of clarity. And I hope you recover from COVID. And thank you for joining, regardless of...
If you allow, Mustafa, I will stay on and listen to a few of the lectures, and then after that, I would like to sign off.
Sure. We would love for you to remain as long as it's as convenient and comfortable for you.
All right. Thank you. Jazakallah.
Thank you.
Before we
Get well soon.
and have lots of ginger tea.
Thank you.
And yeah. Now, before we proceed to the next speaker, we are just going to air a short video that we've made on the Xinjiang issue.
Amid U.S. moves to demonize China, President Biden signed the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act into law on December 23, 2021, which is part of the broader anti-China campaign. Earlier, in October 2020, the U.S. removed the separatist and terrorist group ETIM from the terrorism bill, although the UN still has ETIM on its list of terror outfits.
The United States is, I'd say, a bit neurotic about China's economic and technological successes in recent years, and I regard the U.S. as escalating these tensions in part as a reaction to China's tremendous progress.
China said that the move maliciously denigrates the human rights situation in Xinjiang in disregard of facts and the truth. Moreover, China termed it gross interference in China's internal affairs, a serious violation of international law and basic norms governing international relations.
Having been at war with the Muslim world for the past 20 years, it is sheer double standards on the part of the United States to talk about human rights in Xinjiang, which is actually part of the campaign of the US to demonize China.
चीन के हवाले से जो बातें की गई हैं, तो ये इख्तियार तो अमेरिका को हासिल नहीं है कि वो दुनिया के जो ममालिक हैं उनकी जो दाखिली खुद मुख्तारी है उसमें मुदाखलत करे और उसको जो है वो मातूब करे, उसके ऊपर वो इताब करे, उसके लिए मुश्किलात पैदा करे। चीन इस वक्त एक आलमी क़ुव्वत है, मुआशी एतबार से भी, इक़्तिसादी एतबार से भी, और फिर सक्याक के हवाले से जो अमेरिका की उसके ऊपर मैं समझता हूँ गैर ज़रूरी जो क्रिटिसिज्म है और अमेरिका की तरफ से, तो पहले तो अमेरिकनों को खुद देखना चाहिए कि वो खुद क्या कर रहे हैं।
This was in a nutshell what's happened in vis-a-vis Xinjiang in Washington. And this last message was from the Special Assistant to the Prime Minister on Religious Harmony. Now we would like to hear the speech of Dr. Shirin Mazari, the Minister for Human Rights.
Ladies and gentlemen, at a time when the world is emerging out of a COVID pandemic, which has wreaked havoc with the economies of the world, and where the logic and rationale is for greater economic cooperation internationally amongst nations, we are finding that the US is hell-bent on starting a new Cold War targeting China. They have already created laws through Congress to sanction China using the Xinjiang card. There's a Uyghur forced labor bill that they have introduced, pretending that these are human rights issues. But the question is, if human rights is so critical to US foreign policy, then why is nothing being done to stop the genocide of Muslims in India and the genocide of Kashmiris by the occupation Indian forces? Again, why is nothing being done to stop the elimination of the Palestinian people from their homelands by the Zionist Israeli regime? So the question about human rights being central to US foreign policy and the so-called reason for its actions against China just don't hold ground. The fact of the matter is the US, which is losing power internationally because of its imperialist approach to the rest of the world, is trying a new tactic. We have seen the creation of the Quad in the Pacific region, in the South China Seas, to undermine China there. We have seen the creation of AUKUS, the Australia, US, UK alliance, which is a purely military alliance, again centered on East Asia and the Pacific region, thereby targeting China. We have seen efforts for the containment of China in our part of the world with massive military hardware influx and military cooperation between the US and China, again trying to target China. And of course, there's a difference in approach. The Chinese opening to the world is through economic means, through the creation of trade routes. The Silk Route is one such example, and there are many other examples. CPEC is central to that. So there is a difference of approach. While the US is seeking a new Cold War, militarization of global politics and the global economics, China has a totally different way of approaching the world, which is through sharing economic prosperity, spreading or opening up the world through trade routes, through building up infrastructure in African countries, in Pakistan, so that everybody can avail greater prosperity through greater cooperation, through international trade. And therefore the challenge for the rest of the world, especially for countries like Pakistan, is which way are we going to go? Are we going to go the way of economic prosperity, which is now a central norm of Pakistan's national security policy? Or are we going to be sucked into this new militarization that the Americans are pushing forward? I think for many of us the answer is clear. There is only one rational route, and that is for opening up of the world to international trade, for greater economic cooperation, and that is the way to go. And therefore the Silk Route, the CPEC project, these are all means for furthering international cooperation and prosperity for all, not focusing on militarization of the world. We have seen world wars happen, we have seen the results of militarization, and Muslims especially have suffered with thousands being displaced, millions being killed after the US war on terror began after 9/11. We cannot afford to continue going down that route. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Shirin Mazari. I think that was again, a very clear speech with a lot of clarity and where Pakistan's interests lie and how the United States has consistently applied human rights as actually a weapon, and weaponization of human rights and of lawfare and of selective application of principles. So now I would like to actually read the speech of Professor Li Shiguang on his request, because he is unable to, unfortunately, tune in because of Wi-Fi issues. 1 second, he has again entered the... Professor Lee, can you hear me? Are you able to speak, or would you like me to speak on your behalf? Professor Lee? Okay, so I will read his speech on his behalf. What Samuel Huntington and Bernard Lewis feared most was that the unity of Confucianism and Islam, which could lead to the great unity of Asian people in the pre-modernity spirit of Silk Roads. The West, playing with the Xinjiang card, has two goals. One is to divide and bring down China. Secondly, to undermine China's relations with Muslim countries, trying to create misunderstandings between China and its neighboring Muslim countries and along the Belt and the Road. The playing of the Xinjiang card is to make another Afghanistan. If Xinjiang goes into turmoil, the flagship project of the BRI and the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor will fail. The Belt and Road Initiative passes through most Muslim countries. After the end of the Cold War, the West has been trying to reorganize and destroy large parts of the Muslim world, such as the destruction of Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Libya, and Yemen. A recent example was the failed color revolution in Kazakhstan and the international sanction against the new Afghan government launched by the West. Though the NATO has failed in the battlefield, they do not want to see the consolidation of the new Afghan government and the unity of the Afghan people. They want to prolong the war in Afghanistan, making Xinjiang always living under the shadow of a terrorist war in the next door, blocking Xinjiang's opening to the outside world, and thus blocking the movement of the BRI. Since the collapse of the Soviet Union, the Western crusaders have two imagined enemies, the Muslims and the Chinese. The modern crusaders have launched wars at three fronts. The first front is the visible war against the Muslim countries with arms and missiles, such as the invasion of Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, and Syria. The second front has been a smoke-free war, sabotaging the stability and unity of China by the weaponization of high-sounding political cliches, such as freedom, democracy, and human rights. In recent years, most Muslim countries have been joining the BRI, and a recent new member of the BRI was Syria. Facing the this is it. Thank you, Professor Lee. Unfortunately, you were not able to join us, but I'm glad that I was able to read your speech, and hopefully next time your Wi-Fi will work better and we can hear you in person. Now I would like to invite Ms. Saba Aslam, the Executive Director of the Islamabad Institute of Conflict Resolution, to give her remarks.
Assalamu alaikum, Mustafa and Senator Mushahid Saab, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak at such a topic close to my heart, as I'm working on China and China's role in international politics and all that. So the topic assigned to me was the art of building narratives through sanctions, possible fallouts and way forward. So in this regard, first of all, we have to understand what narrative is basically. And then eventually we will come to the sanctions and like the build-up of the situation. Narratives are actually myths, a set design or a plot. It is a crafting or manipulating to influence the political sphere, or you can say the environment in which you are going to foster. Or narrative is how I see it, like the situation that is going on or anything that is around me, how I see it is the narrative. So when it comes to the international politics, we have seen that the colonial mindset use sanctions and this narrative building as their tool to demonize others, like the other states or the other countries, to get their objectives. So when it comes to narratives, actually it is a process based on time to bring in the likely change. Like narratives are not, you can say, are constructed overnight. They take time, and they are constructed in a way to benefit the one who are in power. So if you see into the history, and if you just go through the history and see how different powerful states have been using sanctions in building this narrative to counter, or you can say to build up the likely mindset for that, they are often forget the history. Narratives are always selective, they are biased, and they are often untrue. So we have to differentiate at this very point that what path we have to take in. So as far as the sanctions are concerned, they are proactive measures and a deliberate effort of any government to withdraw or threat to withdraw the customary or the financial relationship or the bilateral relationship with the target country. Nations and international organizations use sanctions to as a tool to achieve their foreign policy tools and all that. So when it comes to America and China and the situation in Xinjiang and how America tries to be the advocate of the human rights violations and human rights everywhere, there are two modes of imposing sanctions. One is unilateral and the other is multilateral. And when it comes to the case of Pakistan, like the Chinese and the American sanction system, they always use the unilateral sanctions. They always impose unilateral sanctions because they see it as a more effective tool than the multilateral sanctions. As we know that in the case of China and US, both are the world's most powerful economies. Both are economically interdependent, and both have distinct cultural attitude towards the international politics and behaviors. So if we say that about, like, after all these things and after the announcement of the 23rd December's sanction by Biden, we see that might be China or America indulge into or engage into the military option. It is totally untrue, and they won't go into it. Because like for US and China, they will be into the economic quarrels and economic fights. Because like when we study the culture of the sanctions and the, or you can say the art of sanctions and the narrative building and all that, in all these things, in all these build-ups, we have to take into account the culture of the target and the sponsored states. So as far as the Chinese culture is concerned, they are more into the Confucian thing. And the Confucius thing is that the philosophy has the two key pillars. One is hierarchy and the other is reciprocity. So they maintain a very good hierarchy, and there is a very good relationship between the elites and the commons. And the other thing is reciprocity. So the Chinese, they are not the conflict, you can say, acceptant states. Otherwise, they are conflict averse state. So they won't indulge into any military conflict or any open conflict with the Americans. But the thing is this, that the Americans, the way they are playing into the international arena, and they are maligning China for the Xinjiang and the Uyghurs human rights violation, they are doing all these things. So like when it comes to the recommendations or the fallouts of this, America's unilateral policy, unilateral sanctions on the Xinjiang thing won't work, because as far as the threat is concerned, you can only get your desired results as far as the sanctions are used as threats. But when you impose it, because like when we study into all these things, there is a difference between threat stage and imposition stage. Once you are in threat stage, you can force the target state to go accordingly your wills and your desires. But once it is in the imposition state, you can't do anything, because like then the target state is very much, you can say, in the mode to embrace the impact of that sanctions. So as far as China is concerned, they are very much immune to this now, because like China is not a small state or not a third world country, and they are like having the most of the economic, you can say, wholes of the world. So I'm sorry. So as far as Chinese are concerned, they won't get harmed by these American statements or the sanctions behavior or the narrative building by the Americans on that, because like they know what they have to do with it. Secondly, the concept of when we study the sanctions and the narrative building thing, because narrative is the art of cultural attitude and norms. So as I told you that the Chinese, they are not in the, they do not have the culture of all these militarily conflicts in all these like recent history. They have been diverting from the world, from the military, you can say, engagements and all that. So when it comes to their own homeland, they will be working as one unit, and they will be doing anything that can be productive and beneficial for their state. And I don't think so that Americans, by doing all these things, can get their desired result, because like the Chinese, they are very much intact, and they are very much, you can say, the commons or the people, the Chinese public, they are very much pro their elites. So there is no point that they can deviate from that point, and they can build up, or they can go with that pressure that America want to build up. And as far as the other states are concerned, the connecting states, or you can say the friendly states, as far as Pakistan is concerned, I guess like we have to stand by China on this bigger issue. And we have seen that China have been helping us, and China has been with us with every tough and thick and thins. So we have to be, we have to be with Chinese on that. So this is all that. Like when we start up the sanctions thing, we build up the things with the narrative things. So we have to work on that. And China, for America, it is not the first time that America is maligning, or you can say working on all these lines. But as far as China is concerned, they have to come up with some very proactive measures to debunk this by like propagating more and more through videos and through literature and research articles and all everything. Because when there is a gap between in the research, then they comes up with more confusions and all that. So once the Chinese can cater this research gap and fill in the lacunas as far as they are concerned, the American sections are concerned, they will obviously get the maximum international support and everything. Thank you so much. And due to my bad throat, I can't speak more, and I hope that I have addressed the topic and I did just with the topic. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Sabah Aslam, and I hope your cough gets better. And I think you made some good points. And I think one of your key points is that, which you made at the end, that China has been supporting Pakistan's core interests in Xinjiang is a very vital part of China, and also part of the Western corridor of CPEC, and Gwadar is the outlet for Xinjiang to outside markets. And so Xinjiang is not only vital for China, but also for Pakistan. And Pakistan has been and continues to support China on this very important core national interest. Good news is that Professor Li Shiguang has now switched to his wife's laptop. Congratulations. And we look forward to his remarks in person as well. Professor Li Shiguang.
Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. Did Mustafa read my speech earlier or not?
Yes, I did.
Not really. We want to hear you in person.
You can say it.
Okay, I will read it. It's about 1,000 English word. It will not be long, okay?
That's fine.
Okay. What Samuel Huntington and Bernard Lewis feared most was the unity of Confucianism and Islam, which could lead to the great unity of Asian people in the pre-modernity spirit of Silk Road. The West, playing with Xinjiang card, has two goals. One is to divide and bring down China. Secondly, to undermine China's relation with Muslim countries. trying to create a misunderstanding between China and its neighboring Muslim country and the country along Belt and Road. The playing of Xinjiang card is to make Xinjiang another Afghanistan. If Xinjiang becomes turmoil, the flagship of Belt and Road, CPEC, will fail. The Belt and Road Initiative passes through most Muslim countries. After the end of the Cold War, the West has been trying to reorganize and destroy large parts of the Muslim world, such as the destruction of Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Libya, and Yemen. A recent example was the failed color revolution in Kazakhstan and the international sanction against the new Afghanistan launched by the West. Though the NATO failed in battlefield, but they do not want to see the consolidation of the new Afghan government and the unity of Afghan people. They want to prolong the war in Afghanistan, making Xinjiang always living under the shadow of a terrorist war in the next door, blocking Xinjiang's opening to the outside world and thus blocking the movement of the Belt and Road. Since the collapse of the Soviet Union, the Western Crusaders have two imagined enemies, the Muslim and the Chinese. The modern Crusaders have launched war at three fronts. The first front is the visible war against the Muslim countries with arms and missiles, such as the invasion of Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, and Syria. The second front has been a smoke-free war, sabotaging the stability and unity of China by the weaponization of high-sounding political cliches such as freedom, democracy, and human rights. In recent years, most Muslim countries have been joining Belt and Road Initiative. A recent new member of Belt and Road was Libya. Just a moment. Sorry, just a moment. Some problem.
The new member was Syria.
Yes. Yes. One second. Sorry for the. It's okay. It's coming because I'm borrowing my wife's. Okay, it's coming. In recent years, okay, that's been read. Facing the enhanced cohesive power of the new Silk Road, the West in recent years have been making an attempt to create misunderstanding and mistrust between China and Islam countries under the battle flag of a war for the freedom of Xinjiang. China's Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region is the heartland of Belt and Road Initiative, bridging China with South Asia, West Asia, Central Asia, and Russia. Xinjiang is the starting point of CPEC. The flagship of the Belt and Road, it has been widely acknowledged that CPEC will be a game changer, reconnecting the ancient Silk Road, which have been disconnected by the Western imperialism, and making China again a Central Asian country like in the Tang Dynasty, instead of being a Pacific-oriented East Asian country. With the empathy talk, the politicians and the media in the West are talking noisily about boycotting Xinjiang cotton and the Afghanistan new government. The hardworking Chinese engineers and workers have completed the construction of a large airport and a futuristic terminal building at Tashkurgan in the triangle area where China, Pakistan, and Afghanistan borders and the Asian Silk Road meet. 3 weeks ago, the first aircraft landed at Tashkurgan Hongirab Airport. Tashkurgan Hongirab Airport, also known as Wuhan Corridor Airport. It will be a strategically important base for the ambitious One Belt and Road vision. 10 kilometers south of the airport is the village of Darfur, near Wuhan Corridor. Darfur in Wuhan language means gateway. Surrounded by the Hindu Kush Mountain, Karakoram Mountain, and the Pamir Mountain at an altitude of 300 and 200 meters, the airport has built a 3,800 meter runway and will receive 160,000 passengers and 1,900 takeoff and landing every year. After entering 2022, the happiest thing I heard was a piece of news I read last week from the Kashgar Government Information Network that Tashkurgan Hongirab Airport will be officially put into use in May this year, that is 3 months from now. After the Wuhan Airport is put into operation, the airport will become the westernmost airport in China and the nearest airport to Pakistan and Afghanistan. The Wuhan Corridor Airport is less than 1 hour away from the 3 westernmost mountain passes in the Himalaya and the most important corridor of the Silk Road, the Wahi Pass on the China-Afghan border, the Hongirab Pass, and the Minteke Pass on the China-Pakistan border. If a circle is drawn around the Wuhan Corridor Airport, the airport is at the center, connecting the surrounding capitals of Pakistan, Afghanistan, Tajikistan, Iran, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Khotan area of Xinjiang, Ali area of Tibet, as well as the nearby India-occupied Ladakh and Kashmir. By all means, Tashkurgan Hongirab Airport is not only an airport at the crossroad of China, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. It will be an important airport at the heartland of Asia. Last week, His Excellency Mr. Wang Yi, the Chinese ambassador to Afghanistan, had a historic meeting with Afghan Interior Minister Mr. Sirajuddin Haqqani. The meeting and the expected good relation between China and Afghanistan will bring stability, security, peace to Xinjiang and Afghanistan. Both are the heartland of the Silk Road. With an enhancement of the trilateral relation between China, Pakistan, and Afghanistan, in addition to the recent crackdown of the color revolution in Kazakhstan, Xinjiang is expected to enter a new phase of peaceful development and a new opening to the outside world. Ambassador Wang Yi tweeted after meetings that China respects the Taliban's culture, religion. China also respects Afghan people's right to build their own system on the basis of Afghan values. According to Shamhad News Network, Ambassador Wang Yi said China is committed to non-interference in Afghanistan's internal affairs, and the international community should not impose foreign ideas on Afghans. Afghans have the right to build a system in their own country according to their own wishes and their own religion and cultural values. We urge the international community to allow Afghans to form a government of their own choice instead of trying to impose a government on the Afghan people. With the recent meeting between Chinese ambassador and the completion of Wuhan Corridor Airport, the future holds a bright path for the building of a 3 Iron Brothers family, which includes Bhatia, Pakistan brother, Iron brother, Atia, Afghan Iron brother, and Zongtia, Chinese Iron brother. Has hopefully bringing peaceful change to the environment surrounding Xinjiang. Furthermore, China, Russia, and neighboring country of Afghanistan could be part of CPEC, making this country into a close economic and political cooperative group. Thank you. Thank you. I finished my speech.
Very good.
Thank you, Professor Li Shiguang. And also, might I add that you have one of the few professors from a leading Chinese university who's actually crossed over by foot from Xinjiang into Gilgit-Baltistan with a host of students who were doing research on the Silk Road. And we published a joint study on that together as well. So we hope that after the pandemic, you can resume such endeavors and we can host you again in Pakistan. Professor Li Shiguang, very grateful. And now I would like to invite Senator Moshahid Hussain, chairman of the Pakistan-China Institute, who is concluding remarks. And after that, we would like that people like Ambassador Masood Khalid, Ambassador Mana is also here, Gerald Mabanda from Rwanda, Mr. Ayaz Wazir or Mr. Zamir Akram, or anyone else for that matter would like to say anything, please, we would be very happy to have a sort of interactive session after Senator Moshahid Hussain's speech. Over to you, Senator.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, assalamu alaikum, and ni hao to our friends in China. It's a great pleasure to be here to see some friends virtually whom I've not seen for a while. And I think the topic is very important, and just get to the point immediately. First of all, a little bit of the geopolitical context, which is very important. We are witnessing in 2022 some very important historic changes. One is very clear, the inexorable shift in the global balance of economic and political power away from the West to the East. We see a general decline of the West, and by West I mean the United States of America, which I just visited recently in November, and I had a good interaction with people in the Congress, think tanks in Washington. And the America that I knew when I was a student and the America of today is almost beyond recognition. It's so changed. And and also the decline in Europe, particularly, a lot of divisions, a lot of crises in parts of Europe. So that's the first important premise. The second one is the peaceful rise of China. And I think Professor Jeffrey Sachs in the documentary that we showed got it right, that the US is not able to confront China or compete with China in the area of high tech. And I would refer all of you to a very good study which I've just read, which came out last month by Harvard University. On 7th of December, 2021, Professor Graham Allison has authored the study. It's called The Great Tech Rivalry, China versus the United States. And he says in that study, it's 52 pages, it's on the internet, China has displaced the US as the world's biggest high-tech manufacturer. And he cites some figures. 1.5 billion cell phones produced by China in 2020, 250 million computers, 25 million automobiles. And if you link that with the recent report of the IMF on China, that China registered a growth of over 8%, despite the coronavirus pandemic, despite what people had been saying in 2021, that shows that China has bounced back. And I think that's extremely important. That's the second important aspect. Third, two of the states which are leading in this new Cold War, one the US and the other India, are facing a very serious crisis internally. The United States is almost evenly divided. It's almost a political civil war between the Democrats and the Republicans. And this is likely to aggravate because this is an election year. And if present indications continue, Trump will likely to be back. First, the Republicans this year will capture the Congress, and then Trump in 24, if present indications hold. And our next door neighbor, India, is going through a very serious crisis because under Modi, they're trying to transform away from it. And the US despite its opposition to BRI, has launched a copycat program called the B3W, Build Back Better World. And the Europeans have also launched a copycat program called Global Gateway. So as they say, imitation is the highest form of flattery. They may oppose BRI, but they want to be in the same line with the Chinese and try to have a copycat program. So let's see how it will operate. When we come to the current situation with China, we see, I'm reminded of an article I read a long time ago in the New York Times, which shows the mindset of the American security establishment. That article appeared on 13th November 1991, soon after the Cold War was over. The breakup of the Soviet Union was underway. And America was seeing itself as a sole superpower. The article was written by a very influential American who has since died. He was a New York Times correspondent and then also worked in the State Department, then also as the chairman of a lot of think tanks.
Chairman of Council of Foreign Relations.
Yes, Chairman of Council of Foreign Relations, Leslie Gelb. The title of the article was, and this is the article in the New York Times, Breaking China Apart. This was the title of an op-ed in the New York Times by Leslie Gelb, the chairman of the Council of Foreign Relations, Breaking China Apart. And it said that the US might encourage separatism against China, and US may take extraordinary measures to kindling separatism to stop China if China does not fall in line, quote unquote. 13th of November 1991. So I think that kind of vision, that kind of mindset of the so-called sole superpower is in operation now when it comes to Xinjiang. I call it the 3Ds approach. First, you demonize a country. This happened with Iraq, this happened with Afghanistan, with Syria. It's the same pattern, or Russia now under Putin. Demonize, then you damage its reputation that through constant propaganda, and then you destabilize. So demonize, damage, and destabilize, and then destabilize. And what are the steps they have taken in this new Cold War against China? There are specific steps. And I will list 5 of those measures. Separately, you can connect the dots. First week of October 2020, the United States lifts the ban on ETIM, which they had certified in 2002, along with the United Nations as a separatist and terrorist organization. East Turkestan Islamic Movement. And the UN still retains that label of terrorism, but the US has lifted it. Similar to the way they lifted the ban on the MKO, Mujahideen-e-Khalq organization, against Iran, when they wanted to use the MKO in Iraq against Iran under the Bush administration. And after that, they had declared it axis of evil in 2002. The pattern is similar. So they lifted the ban. Secondly, the step taken 26th of October 2020, 1 week before the American presidential elections, Pompeo, the Secretary of State of the US, and Esper, the Secretary of Defense of the US, fly into Delhi to sign the BECA, Basic Exchange Cooperation Agreement, BECA, with India, which is a strategic agreement to rope in India before the American presidential elections. So it means there's a consensus between the Republicans and the Democrats. And it follows 2 other agreements. 2018, it was COMCASA on communication and data exchange, intelligence exchange. And in 2016, it was LEMOA, Logistics Exchange Memorandum of Association. And at the same time, in 2018, the Americans renamed the Asia Pacific Command as the Indo-Pacific Command. When Admiral Harris, the Commander-in-Chief, said, from Hollywood to Bollywood, we will have cooperation. And then they announced in NATO, the 2030 study, NATO 2030 document listed in November 2021 says China is one of the major threats and challenges for NATO. As far as my understanding of geography goes, China is never By which stretch of the imagination is China part of the North Atlantic? So China has now been put on the NATO agenda as a threat along with Russia. This was done. So part of the new Cold War. Then they established the AUKUS, AUKUS, Australia, UK, United States. They have the Quad, which includes Asian, but the AUKUS is more of a white man's club. Australia, UK, and US. It doesn't include Japan and India, who are Asian countries. So that was also very clearly because they want to now bring it together as part of the pivot of the Cold War in Asia Pacific. And the fifth aspect, I've listed all the steps they have taken for this new Cold War, was a recent passage of what is called the Strategic Competition Act by the US Congress. This is China specific, 270 pages. And in that, there is a $300 million annual, and I quote the name of the fund, called Countering China Influence Fund. This is the name. So it's officially now clear that it is to counter and combat China, propaganda, demonization, and you will see a lot of the money flowing in here also in different parts of the world. Although there are 145 countries in BRI and 32 international organizations, but they will continue with that. So this is what this whole situation is all about, the context. I'm just stating the facts which are there. And I think Sabah Aslam had a point when she talked of Chinese people and the relationship with the Communist Party of China. Please see the survey published by the Harvard University, by the Ash Center, which is part of Harvard University, in July 2020, which was a 17-year continuous study of Chinese public opinion, about 32,000 Chinese over a period of time, their views of the Communist Party of China and the governance. And the figures are astounding. Over 90% support and are satisfied with rule by the Communist Party of China in China. Because the reason is their lives are better off than before. Better than their forefathers, their parents, their grandparents. So the Communist Party of China has provided stability, continuity, peace, and prosperity to the people of China. So it is in this context we are seeing this issue. We in Pakistan are very clear, and I think the statements which came from Dr. Ijaz Akram, my good friend, and I compliment him and wish him good luck in his new role, and also Dr. Shirin Mazari, the Minister for Human Rights, there's strategic clarity where we stand and who do we stand with. And in this context, we congratulate our Chinese friends on the upcoming New Year, the Year of the Tiger, and together the tigers in Pakistan and Asia will unite to combat any other hounds or any other kind of people who try to undermine our relationship. And we also congratulate the Chinese people on the upcoming Beijing Winter Olympics. We are very happy that the Prime Minister of Pakistan is also going to be there at the inaugural ceremony on 3rd of February and 4th of February and 5th of February. And I would also take up what Professor Li Shiguang has said. Li Shiguang is a Chinese Marco Polo because he goes to different places physically, personally. And I had the honor and pleasure 5 years ago of receiving him at the head of a 22-member delegation of students and scholars from Tsinghua and other universities in Hong Kong when he came by road from Kashgar through the Karakoram highway, and we received him at the tunnels which the Chinese have built after the Atabad Lake problem. And I compliment him the launching of the Wakhan Corridor Airport at Tashkargaon. I think it's a very major development. In May 2022, it will be inaugurated. And that means from Islamabad to Tashkargaon will take 40 to 45 minutes by jet. So the connectivity is going to be strong. And this connectivity is not just with Islamabad, it's with Kabul, with Dushanbe, with Ashkabad, with Tashkent, with Samarkand, with Bukhara, and all the other countries of, and also Almaty and Bishkek, so and Mashhad and Tehran. So I think that we are seeing this new connectivity, and Pakistan is very fortunate because of our role and because of our location, we are a pivotal player. And in this, we have this very strong solidarity. China has been facing problems like any other countries. Xinjiang has been a problem. Tibet, you can already see the separatist movement has its headquarters in India, in Dharamshala, led by the Dalai Lama. Hong Kong also, when Hong Kong unrest started, it was very interesting to see Chinese protests being shown on Indian television, because the Indian television teams flew to Hong Kong as if on cue to disseminate those things. And I remember 5-6 years ago when I used to go to Xinjiang, it was a state of siege almost, because there were 2-3 acts of terrorism every fortnight, every month or so. We have had a problem of terrorism. Pakistan even used the Air Force to bomb people in our own territory on terrorism. So China is handling its issue, and it has restored peace without resorting to the such violence which we have seen in other countries. But obviously, as Professor Li Shiguang says, there are attempts now to make it into what happened in Syria, Libya, Afghanistan, and other places in the Muslim world. And of course, China will not allow that, and no other country can allow that. And you can see what happened in Kazakhstan also, that there was this intervention, because they realized that there was, after Afghanistan, then there could be more instability in the region. So we in Pakistan value our strong friendship and solidarity with China. We support China on its core interests, be it Xinjiang, be it Taiwan, be it Tibet, be it Hong Kong, be it the South China Sea, and be it the Belt and Road Initiative. And we feel that this region, after 42 years of war in Afghanistan, can not return to any kind of a new war, whether hot or cold. And we reject this notion of a new Cold War, or this mindset, which is aimed at cleavages, conflict, and confrontation. So wishing you all a happy new year. Please stay safe from the Omicron virus, which is spread like wildfire even in Pakistan. And of course, China has had success in that with the zero COVID approach. And we wish you all the best in the Olympics, which are upcoming. And Pakistan is one of the participants, and Pakistan is rejecting the boycott of these Olympics, which is politically motivated, and which is also, again, another lever, another instrument, another tool of the so-called new Cold War against China, which is bound to fail. Because we should be on the right side of history, and the right side of history is the resurgence of Asia in the Asian century, in which Pakistan and China are strategic partners and iron brothers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Mujahid, for a very data-driven speech full of facts, from the Ash Center to Becca to the 2 projects of BB3W and the Global Gateway, and so many things. And we continue to learn, even though we have a lot of exposure to you, in a personal capacity and also from a think tank's perspective, but we continue to take notes when you're speaking, if I may say so, because so much knowledge and connecting the dots. I will now call upon, so thank you, Senator Mujahid, for that excellent summary. Ambassador Masood Khalid will be making an intervention. After that, Gerald Mabanda, the Director of the Ministry of Information of Rwanda, will make an intervention. And anyone else who would like to intervene or give a comment, please send a message in the chat box on Zoom. Ambassador Masood Khalid, and before Ambassador Masood Khalid speaks, just want to say that he's served in Beijing for 6 years, and he served at a very crucial time when CPEC was just taken off, and his contributions in Pakistan-China friendship and actually getting CPEC off the ground are tremendous, and we pay tribute to Ambassador Masood Khalid. Sometimes what happens is, in Pakistan, we forget people who have played an important role after they're no longer in office. And we reject the Cold War, we also reject that mindset. So over to you, Ambassador Masood Khalid.
Well, thank you very much. Good afternoon to everyone, and I'm so happy to see Professor Li Shiguang. We are literally cut off from each other physically, but our minds and hearts are there together. Now, a very comprehensive and a very informed discussion has taken place. Very valuable comments have been made, and especially the last one by Senator Mushahid Hussain. I think this comprehensive overview, which he gave in about 12 minutes or so, giving data and figures and referring to studies and recalling the 1991, I think, study by the chairman of the council, an article in the New York Times. I think it was very useful for all of us. Now, I'll make some brief comments, and so I don't want to encroach upon the time, which is available. First of all, it's very clear that the purpose of this, overdrawn security construct by the United States through formation of a coalition of like-minded countries in the form of Quad, AUKUS, Indo-US strategic partnership, and now, this coalition, the Middle East, Israel, UAE, and United States, this and that. Primarily, it is meant to contain China's technological and, economic rise and to strangulate China's progress. This is my point number one. Point number two is that US and the West wants, to unleash a kind of a domino effect in those regions of China, in those provinces of China, which are perceived as vulnerable. This attempt was made in Hong Kong, and they were successful in mobilizing quite a massive sort of outpouring, but it was engineered, it was inspired, but the Chinese government came forward and has controlled the situation there more or less. Now they are trying the same thing in Xinjiang, and then perhaps next will be Tibet, because as you would recall, when Secretary of State Blinken visited India a couple of months ago, he did meet the Tibetan dissidents there. So one should see these developments in a larger context. That kind of a domino effect is trying to be engineered and triggered in China so that China's stability is undermined. And I would not like to dilate more or explain more how important Xinjiang is. I think previous speakers have very eloquently articulated that point of view. We all know how important Xinjiang is. If Xinjiang is destabilized, BRI and CPAC will receive a serious setback, goes without saying. So China's effort is to sort of defeat these designs, to foil these designs through security measures. And, when this so-called propaganda against China started in the context of Xinjiang, it was being said that the genocide is taking place. Now that term has been downgraded to cultural genocide. So, this is all gimmickry. And the attempts which are being made to really create problems for China on all fronts, I would say. Internal front and externally also, China is trying to be encircled. Now, China's current standoff with India should also be seen in that larger context. That China wants to consolidate its position in these sensitive and vulnerable regions like Tibet, Xinjiang, and of course in Hong Kong. So through military means, through security measures, and sort of creating some kind of new facts on ground, so that India, for instance, is not able to undermine China's strategic and military interest in Tibet and Xinjiang. So this point also needs to be borne in mind. I agree with the point. I think it was Professor Li Shiguang, I think, made this point that basically the purpose of this bill and similar other measures, coercive measures by United States, is to divide China and to create misgivings between China and the Muslim world. So I think this is important to keep in mind, that these attempts will continue. And Senator Mushahid Hussain also referred to this endowment, $300 million endowment, which has been created to step up propaganda against China. But here, I would like to recall an article by Tom Friedman in the New York Times also. I think way back in early 90s, he had predicted the collapse of China. And later on, a few years ago, he admitted himself that that was a wrong theory. That was a wrong, guess and anticipation. And he said that China is moving ahead, and my theory was wrong. So my point is that those who are, dreaming or who desire China's collapse, I think they will fail. And these attempts by the United States, against China will also fritter out. I don't think they will backfire, because there is no traction for this. 145 countries in BRI, they want their interest promoted through collaboration between China and them. So they do not want, even ASEAN countries are not prepared to choose sides. Even European countries are not prepared to choose sides between United States and China. So this is the picture which should be kept in mind. In Pakistan, while we take pride, on our relations with China, time-tested friendship, and China has always come forward to help Pakistan whenever we have faced problems, and vice versa. Pakistan also supports China on its vital issues, on its core interest. But I think there are certain elements in Pakistan who are, I think, being supported by the powers, by the external powers, to indulge in this anti-China kind of, in promoting anti-China sentiment. And this is sometimes deliberate and sometimes based on misinformation or half-baked information. And, they buy these theories about the China threat, about China debt, and this and that. Of course, they are not knowledgeable on the facts fully. So my point is that we have to guard against such elements who now and again will try their best to create an environment where some misgivings are created in this vital relationship between Pakistan and China. But I am confident that this relationship is so resilient and is strong, and is so sure-footed that we will collectively and jointly foil all these nefarious designs. Thank you very much. I'll stop here.
Thank you, Ambassador Masood Khalid. I think excellent points, and I think you've also given a great context from India to what's happening in Pakistan and proxies, and the momentum which is being built for this Cold War that we've been talking about. Now, I'd like to pass the virtual podium to Mr. Gerald Mubanda from the Ministry of Information. He's a director in Rwanda, which is also part and parcel of the Belt and Road Initiative and has some of the successful BRI projects in Africa, actually. And Gerald was at the Peking University, and Gerald and I have had the pleasure of being students at the Peking University as well. He's a good person, friend. Such a pleasure to see you on Zoom. Over to you, Gerald.
Yeah. Thank you, my brother. I'm glad to see you, and thank you for inviting me. I'm glad to see Senator. I think we last saw each other in China. I'm really glad to follow and get the great ideas from this discussion. And I agree with all presenters really that what the US is doing about Xinjiang, it's all about counteracting the China rise. If you look at the history of the US, I think there is no country in the world that has committed gross human rights against the people of their countries like the US has done. The country they are occupying, we know that they committed a genocide against the indigenous people. So it would not be US to talk about any human rights violation in any country. Secondly, issues of human rights and democracy, I think, therefore, internal matters of each and every country, not an external. Every country has got a system of democracy that, of course, does not have to be universal. All countries don't have to subscribe to the capitalistic way of democracy. So these, I think, are excuses, as most of the presenters said, that really point to undermining China's rights. And this is the biggest threat that I think the United States has. And of course, they are intending to isolate China from the rest of the world. The Xinjiang boycott of cotton and other issues, I think this is also economic because it is intended to isolate China from the global supply chain. So probably I could take this chance to tell you about the experience with Africa, because isolation of China is not only focused on issues like Xinjiang. Also in Africa, when you look at what the United States is doing in Africa, first of all, the West colonized most of the African countries. But after colonialism, they assumed that Africa was their own space of dominion. But as they got involved in wars around the world, I think they had that kind of feeling that they have their own land there. But little did they know that China was developing close and better friendship with African countries. And by the time they woke up, they found China was doing a lot of business. China was giving a lot of help to African countries. And most of the countries have really got a win-win kind of relationship with China. So today, most of the African countries have signed up to the BRI. And this has taken the US and most of the Western countries by surprise. So they wake up now and come and try to find a way they can isolate China from African countries, which is almost impossible because since the year 2000, when China and African countries signed what is called the FOCA, or the Forum for China and African Cooperation, we see that African countries have benefited a lot in terms of infrastructure development, in terms of agriculture improvement, and these African countries have also found a benefit in working with China than the US. Of course, in the 100 years of colonization, they never had such a good cooperation and improvement. So they're using the word debt trap to try and tell African countries that China is giving them money that they can never pay back. But this is not true because they lied to African countries in the 1980s, what they call the Structural Development Program, which actually plunged the African countries more into debt. But the African countries need this money for development. And this is what China is doing. So what we see in Xinjiang is no different from what is happening to other countries all over the world. So the rise of China is a very threatening issue to the West. And I think as friends of China, what I may say is that we should be exposing this hypocrisy and also tell the world that China is not alone, so that we expose them. There is no such a thing. Every country, by the way, has its way of fighting terrorism because terrorism is a global threat. China has used its own ways of solving the problem in Xinjiang. But if this is called a genocide, then I think we should come to the side of China and explain to the world, because most of the propaganda, we see what is happening there. We should have other voices all over the world trying to show that really what China is doing is in her right. She has to find her own means of fighting terrorism, because we don't have one policy that fits everyone to deal with terrorism. So I think on the Xinjiang issue and also the Cold War mentality, these are issues that affect us globally, not only China neighbors, but also the whole world. And I think we have to come up and show solidarity with our Chinese friends, and how these Western countries can be counteracted on the issues that want to isolate China from the rest of the world. I thank you very much. I think those are my few comments.
Thank you, sir. I think that is a great perspective from Africa, and also the experience of Africa, the colonialism and how that's linked with what now China is facing from the West, and the dividends of the BRI in countries like yours, and we've had many conferences. So thank you very much for that very important perspective. Senator Mshad, you want to say something? Okay. And would anyone else like to make any comment? Yes, Senator Mshad. We can't hear you.
I said I was complimenting Mr. Gerald Mamanda for a very good speech, and gave a perspective from Africa, which is normally missing in the discourse, and how China has helped Africa, conversely, how the West has exploited Africa. Thank you so much. It was a good learning experience, sir.
And thank you, Tariq Sumer Saab from the News and Jung newspaper for also joining us. Would anyone else like to make any comment before we wrap up? Okay. So you got a good, it's 1:30. We started at 12. So I think we will conclude this session. We are very grateful to all our speakers for taking out time from the schedule, and for the participants for taking out time from during the working hours on a weekday. We are very grateful. We are grateful, Professor Li Shiguang, that you took out time from Beijing to be a part of this on short notice. And we thank everyone. The Friends of Silk Road will be an ongoing conversation. And this is our 18th event since the launch of the Friends of Silk Road. And the Friends of Silk Road gives a platform to civil society, political parties, media, businesses, to come on one platform and to discuss the Belt and Road Initiative, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. And we have the event today is on Xinjiang, and we have another one, the Joint Consultative Mechanism with the International Department of the Central Committee on January 24th, and multiple other initiatives and events that we will keep all of you posted. And the Friends of Silk Road, after its success in Pakistan, for everyone's perusal, has now become a good and prominent initiative in other countries after the successful pilot in Pakistan, in Bangladesh, Malaysia, Nepal, Bhutan, and Philippines also. So this is an important platform, and we will continue to build on this platform, and your feedback on how to enhance this is also welcome. So thank you very much. And have a great day and remain safe. Thank you very much.